Welcome everyone. Today we will discuss HTML forms. In this tutorial I will discuss each and everything relating to forms. I have basically commented those topics that we will cover in HTML forms. What is the purpose of HTML forms? They are basically used in order to take input from the user in the form of a form and then send it to the browser or search engine in order to receive some specific data. For example, when you create your Facebook page, for this you first sign up, or let's suppose take an example of creating a Gmail ID. When you create a Gmail ID, in that case you give your data in the form which has been sent to the browser, and in the response you take your account. So this is the function of forms. Forms are used almost on every website. For example, there is a website of electrical machinery, and let's suppose you want to have an inquiry about something, so you go to the contact us page. In that page you actually do submit your forms and ask your queries. So forms can be used for different kind of purposes. Today we will discuss that what are some of the elements used in the forms and also some of the attributes associated with forms. Although forms cannot work without PHP, which is basically a language in order to connect the front end to the back end. Now what is back end? So by back end I basically means databases. So if you want to connect your front end form or data HTML to your back end, in that case you need a specific language which is basically PHP. ASP.NET can also be used. So we cannot complete our form course without PHP, but we will get to know that what work we can done on the front end in order to send our data. Later then I will create a course of PHP and databases, so you will then get to know that how to send the data to the server. So first let me tell you that what topics we will cover today. We will get to know the element form, input, labels, what are methods, get method, then post method, input type text, input type submit, input type radio, checkbox, select, text area, button, input type date, input type email, input type file, month, number, range, input type time, color, what is hidden input value, what is basically input type password, what is reset used for, what is search used for, input type search, and input attributes. What are some of the input attributes? For example, disabled attribute, multiple attribute, required attribute, autofocus, and autocomplete attributes. So let's switch to the code and let me create a form for you. So in order to create the form, first you need an opening form tag and then a closing form tag. It means that I am creating a form, and you must give a specific name to your form. For example, my form name is, let me give it my form. You can also give it some specific ID in order to format it in CSS. For example, the same, I am giving the ID, and then we will discuss what is method, but we will discuss method in the last. Get and post method, how we use it, why we use it, and what's its purpose. So this we will discuss in the last. So first, if I want to give first name and last name, for this we need labels and inputs. First I want to create label. For example, this is a label, and this label is for first name. So let's suppose I am saying that this label is for creating first name. Then I want to create input or a field of type text, because your first name will be in the form of text. So input type is equal to text, but remember that you must have to give it a name. So the name is basically, let me give it first name. Okay, so the name of my input type is equal to name, and we can give it some value as well. For example, if you want to give any value to it. So this has created first name for us. For example, then I want to create, let me give it a br line break. Now let me create last name as well. So I just need to change label, and here as well. So we have created input type first name and input type last name. Let us run it in our Google Chrome. Now we have created first name and last name. Now after it, I want to create one another label for example, I want to give a label for password, and let me create a password label for password. Input type should be password here and not text, because it is a password. Then I am creating a label for example, I want to create radio buttons. Then let me say that select yes or no. For creating radio buttons, I need to have input type is equal to radio, and name is equal to, for example, this radio button is for yes. Okay, and then let me create one another label. For example, I want to create for no, and input type is equal to radio, and let us give it a name of, for example, no. This radio button would be for yes, and this would be for no. After this, I want to create label for is equal to checkbox. I'm giving it some name, for example Java, and input type in that case would be checkbox, because we want to create checkbox, and name is equal to Java. Now I want to create three types of such checkboxes, for example, and let me give it a name HTML, and then for example CSS. Then I want to create a label for is equal to textarea, and for example I'm giving it a name comments. You may have seen certain websites where you can post your comments. So how we create it? We create it in such a way. So label for text area, and I want a text area for comments, and get that in that case, for example, my input type would be text area, and I want to give it some size. So we can do it in two ways. Either we give it some width and height, or we can do it with rows and columns. The standard way is rows and columns, so let me do it with rows and columns. For example, the rows I want to give is 10, and the calls, which mean columns, I want to give is 20. You can set it according to your own requirement. Another label is for date. How to create a date field? For example, I have created the label, and then we will say that the input type would be basically date, and name would be date. This would basically create a date for us. We can also create label for is equal to search. If I want to create a search input, how I can do it? I have created the label, and then the input type would be equal to search, and name would be search. Another label which I can create is basically range. If you want to have a range of certain numbers, then in that case you can create a label for and an input for range. For example, label for is equal to range, and input type is equal to range, name is equal to range. What else we can create? Let me see the comments. We can create input for email, file, and numbers. Email, file, number, and month. So label for email, input type would be email, because in that case it will only accept the format of email and not text or anything else. And in that case, input type for file. And in order to create a file, if you want to select some files and upload it, in that case you need input type to be file. Input type file is really an important. It is used in different projects. You cannot work without input type file. Input type label for number. For example, input type is equal to number if you want to create number field. And if you want to include or give the specific month, in that case you need input type is equal to month. There is one another input type which is by the name of time. If you want to include the current time, in that case you need the input type time. So the name would be time. There is one another input by the name of input type is equal to hidden, which don't require a label. This is because, for example, let me create it, then I will tell you the name hidden underscore element. For example, this is our hidden input type. Why we use input hidden type? Because there are some situations in which we want to send hidden data to our server, and we do not want it to show to the user or client or the person who want to fill their forms. So in that case we want to have a hidden input type and send it to the server. So it has its use and purpose. Now let me run it and show it to you in Chrome. So as you can see that we have created first name, last name, our password field, then we have created our radio button fields, we have then created our select fields, our comment area, we have then also created the date field, the search input type, and then we have created the email field. We have also created the file input type, the number field, the month field where you can give a specific month, and we have also given the time field. I will set it through CSS, but first I want to tell you about the last element of the form, which is really important, and which is input type is equal to submit. Name is equal to submit, and value, for example, what you want to display on the input type. For example, I want to show the submit. Why use input type submit button? For example, if you want to submit your form, in that case you need to have a submit button. So now let me set it through CSS, then I will tell you in detail that how these inputs work. I'm just setting it. So I am giving a line break in order to make it more clear. We have forgot to give the specific names. Now let us run it again. We have just missed one PR, and that is basically here. Now the form is on the left side, so first I want to bring it to the center. So remember that in that case we cannot apply the margin or float or text align center property to my form. If I want to bring it to the center, first I will include this form in our div element. Remember we have discussed div element previously. So how we will do this? Let me show it to you. So my form has start from here. I will just include the form in a div element, and then I will enclose it here. So my form will be included in this div element, and then I will give some ID to my div. For example, form underscore div, that this is the div which have the form. And I will go to my CSS form underscore div, and then I will say that text should be aligned to the center. Now let me refresh it again. So as you can see that the form has been now in the center. I want to do a little bit more formatting, and now I want to have my inputs, my label and input. So I will write the name of the label and input. In that case I want to have font size, for example, 20 pixels. You can do many more formatting, whatever you want, but I'm just showing you the basic method. For example, if I want to give color to my labels, in that case how I will do it? Let me go to Google and take some good color from HTML color codes, and in that case let me take some colors. Okay, so for example I want the color of the label to be this one. So as you can see that our labels has got a specific colors. Now I want to tell you about input attributes. That what are basically input attributes? There are 5 attributes, although there are many, but the important ones are these. First one is disabled, the next one is multiple, the third one is required, the fourth one is autofocus, and the fifth one and the last is autocomplete. First, let me tell you about what is disabled. For example, if to my first text element, my input type, first name, if I write in front of it disabled with inline style, I have written disabled to my input type first name. I have written disabled, so this field will become disabled. As you can see that I can't work in this field because it has become disabled. Why we use disabled? There are situations in which people want to disable specific input fields. There are its specific purpose. But in the last, when we do a full project of HTML and CSS, I will tell you that why we use them. So this was about disabled attribute. The next one is multiple. A multiple attribute is used with file input type. For example, I have this file input and I write with it multiple. Then it would mean that then it would mean that now I can select multiple files. Previously we can only select a single file and choose it, but when I write multiple in front of it, it means that we can select more than one files. The third, which is really an important one, is basically required. What does required mean? We can say that required is equal to required. It means that this field is required. For example, a user come to a site and fill a form but leave an input field by mistake or unintentionally. In that case, we just have to not submit the form. If we submit the form, then user will have to send an empty field. In that case, it would create a problem for us because he would not have filled all the forms and remain a field. In that case, I am saying that required is equal to required, that this field is required. We will actually write this with all our input types, so that when a user submit the form and leave an empty input type field, in that case it will show a message for you that this is basically a required field. For example, if I remove this disabled and I run it, and I'm saying that this, and then this, I will show this thing to you in the last when I fully fill the form. And for example, if I left this field, so it will show us a message. But for now, let me tell you about another attribute, which is basically autofocus and autocomplete. So what is autocomplete? I have a form and I want to say that autocomplete is equal to on. When I on the autocomplete on my form, it means that when a user fill a form and submit it, but he has done any mistake in a form, or for example he has left a single field, in that case he would not required to fill the remaining all form again and again. The form fields will automatically be filled with the previous one he had filled. For example, a user has come here and type a data here, 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 then here, also here, and here, and for example he has left these fields, or he has just left this one or this one and this one, and he submitted. So in that case, He would just need to fill the remaining which he had not, and not the ones he had already filled. So it would come again by default with the autocomplete on options. There is one another and last important attribute of input, which is basically autofocus. So so if I write to my first name autofocus, what does it mean? Let me tell you. It means that it has already bring the focus. You can see the cursor effect. It is blinking. It means that it is autofocused for me, and it's telling me that you can start typing from here. This was about autofocus. There is one another input type by the name of input type is equal to reset, name is equal to reset, and value is equal to reset. What will reset button do? It will basically reset or refresh our form. When we submit the form, and it will have the data, so when I click on the reset, it will basically refresh all the form. Now the last thing that I want to tell you is about input methods. That what is basically input method? I have left this initially. Input method basically means that through which method you want to send data to your server. What is server? So server is the place where all the files on internet are placed. For example, if you want to have an inquiry about a specific product or a service, or if you want to create your email, or you want to send a query, so in that case your query or your question will be sent to the server which is on the internet. In that case, there is a specific protocol through which you want to send your data, or you can say there is a specific method through which you can send your data. There are basically two methods through which you can send your form data to the server. First one is get, and the next one is post. Get and post. We do this by HTTP request. Through HTTP request, get and post works. One is get and the next one is post. What is the difference between get and post? So when you send your data through get, it will be shown in your URL. For example, in that case, if I write something and I submit it, you can see that my data is looking in my URL. You can see that my data has been shown in the URL, which is really insecure and not a good way to send the data to server. If you don't have a sensitive or private data, and if you do not want to show your private information, that in that case I will recommend that you do not use the get method. There are some cases where get methods are used, but those are the cases where the data is not that much big and the information are not sensitive or private one. In that case we use get method. But on the other hand, if we use post method, then post has really lots of advantages. The first advantage of post is that the data has not been shown in your URL. The next important point is that you can send huge number of data through post. And the third point is that it is really a secure way of sending your data. For example, let me show it to you. If I want to send the data, for example, the first name is tech, last name is geek, there is some password, tech, geek, some password, and I want to say yes, HTML, comments, for example, then I want to give some date and I want to search about HTML topics, and let me give it an email, and let me select an image, and let me select an image, and for example I am sending some numbers, and then I am saying that July 2020, and let's suppose I am giving a time which is basically PM. So this is my all data. When I send it to post, so it will not be shown in the URL. So as you can see that our data has been sent, but it's not shown in the URL. So this is really a specific data. There is one last property by the name of action. Some page.php. What will action do? For example, when I fill the form and submit my data, so it will goes to some specific page, and the name of the page will be some page, where there will be written a PHP code, and through this PHP code and this page the data will be sent to the server. So you just need to know about the action. In action we do give a PHP file name. What is this thing? So we will cover this in our PHP course. So guys, this was about forms, and I hope that you would like it, and please subscribe and like our channel for more videos. Thanks, take care, and bye.